Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. So, hi everybody on the Thinkly community of business and finance. I think uh, welcome to another edition of Thinkly Talks. I think we are very lucky today to have with us Amyn Ghadiali, who's really like a marketing guru, a digital marketing guru. So, Amyn, right away, big welcome to you from the team.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. Yes.
Our pleasure.
Yes, I'm very much fine.
I'm sorry, there's an echo. I think.
Yeah. Now is it fine?
It's fine, absolutely.
Yes.
So just by way of quick background, so Amyn, has been, like I said, in the digital marketing space for probably a decade and a half now, and has been chosen as one of the most influential digital marketing professionals by CMO Asia, a digital marketing professional of the year 2022, and winner of the top 30 under 30 by Social Samosa, right? So, he specializes in integrating marketing initiatives, which range right from performance marketing to branding, across B2B and B2C. Interesting, a good trivia about Amyn is that he's been involved strategically with a highly popular, a Twitter handle called the Mumbai, Police, and I think that's it's pretty well known for its what should I say, witty tweets and responses, and so I think really been a great PR for the government, right? And presently, Amyn has been is the president of business and integration at Gozu, yeah. So, great. I mean, you've been there for a while now. You've kind of seen this whole space evolve. In fact, it was taking me, this whole chat with you was kind of taking me back to my time when I was in advertising, when I started off somewhere in the late 90s. So I was with what was Fulcrum, which then grandfather to become Mindshare, then eventually grandfather to become today what we know as BPM, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So being one of the founding members of that.
And you have seen more than what I
have. Well, and that's the interesting part. I kind of keep wondering that at that time digital was very small. There were so many initiatives at that time, and there was this whole .com boom that happened where everybody was focused on digital for a while. And you know what? Nothing really panned out, right? And in your mind, when was really the turning point for mainstream advertising to switch over to digital?
See, I'll tell you, at least from my opinion, that when I entered the field in 2010. Okay. So before that, obviously 3 years of education because I did my BMM. And being an advertising enthusiast, you always saw ads on TV. And at that point in time, I had nothing but great commercials, TV films with jingles that you can remember. And that is what we grew up with, right? For me, I felt that there was a shift. Earlier, it was a lot about impression and reach. So when you're talking about the .com bubble or any of those places, it was to build an ecosystem. So when you're building an ecosystem, I believe the possibilities of failures are a lot more because you learn a lot faster, you evolve from it. So a lot of it was ad-based in the sense whether you look at Yahoo at that point, which was really popular. The banners there costed a lot because there was traffic that was coming in. And it was a lot more impression based or ad based. I feel that everything shifted when things became conversational led. And if you would look at the messaging journey, feedback is the most important thing in the messaging ecosystem. There was no place of feedback in communication and advertising up until social media came. So while the ecosystem was being built, there came in. So earlier there was Orkut and MySpace and all of that, which came and experimented, dabbled, failed, and all of that. It came in Facebook, and I think that was big game changer. Obviously, nothing exists in isolation. So while that happened, the smartphone industry boomed. So I think everything came together, and that is where it sort of wasn't just a bubble that was burst, I think, or was waiting to burst. What happened was the bubble was not a burst. If you ask me, in my opinion, it was a lot of trial and error. So everything leads you up until a point, to the evolution that it requires. And there is obviously going to be a huge drop. That is the case with anything. You look at now, I don't know if people believe in crypto or not, but if you look at crypto, it's seen a huge downfall. You would say that was a burst, but after 10 years, 15 years, we may look back and say that it was course correction. There's a way of looking at it. So I would say that was the shift, at least for me, and how I look at it.
Great. No, I think what you're referring also is, what they call as the hype cycle, right? I mean, whenever something new happens, you just see this huge, hype around this whole thing. People think it's going to change the world. It's going to kind of revolutionize everything. And then eventually you just see this huge drop because then you have this whole thing of disappointment, right? But then that's when the real use cases come in. And I think you're so true. I mean, when you look at internet, when you look at advertising, social media, all of them have been through the hype cycle. I think the one that we're going through right now is the Web 3.0. And now, even more lately, you could probably even call ChatGPT as the next big one, right? Because from ChatGPT ruling us, taking over the world, to people saying, what, this AI is quite kind of, meaningless, and it's, it's hallucinates, it's inaccurate, stuff like that, right? So I guess that's pretty much, But, you touched upon an interesting point. You talked about how there was no feedback loop in advertising, right? And that's something that I've seen very closely when talking to marketers, because I was in media planning, and there was a saying at that time, right, that when I spend my money, I know 50% of that is wasted, right? The only problem is I don't know which 50%.
Which 50%,
So the whole thing is that client is like struggling because he has no idea of which ad work, what work. We used to have all these things called, the measurements around reach and frequency, so you would really focus about how much of your TG are you trying to reach, and how many times in the purchasing behavior, let's say 3 weeks or 4 weeks, are you trying to reach that person? I mean, that's probably the only measure that we did. But we could never measure the output or the effectiveness of that. Not through, we obviously had proxy measurements and all that stuff. So, I think the thing that really started exciting, I would imagine, the marketers, is suddenly you had something which was very, very measurable. I mean, I could probably, run an ad, and I could actually have a call to action, and then I can know whether it's getting converted, right? I mean, so suddenly the whole feedback loop became very big with the digital marketing, right? But, at the same time, don't you think so that's kind of led, because everything is measurable and marketers love measuring, don't you think that, digital marketing in some ways has got very, very reduced to ROI and performance marketing only? I mean, do you really see the brands being built around that?
Yeah. See, the thing is, I'll present two sides of point of view. I mean, 2 points of view here. Because if you would look at one way, you're right. That, everything, because it is measurable, people want to make sure that they are dissecting every number to the T and, making sense out of it. And if you look at the other side, that started happening as soon as creativity and media was split in advertising. So it is not a recent phenomenon. It's like something that everyone in the industry was chasing, saying, how can we get better output, or rather ROI, ROS, whatever the terms are, how can I get a better return for my ad spends? Now, earlier it was offline, because media companies then became media giants. Earlier, creative and media was under the same house. So that split automatically started, that question was constantly on people's mind. Right. What digital did was gave them the hope that now it is possible to measure even to the minutest of detail. Now, obviously, as it evolves, we will have more of it. Now, in the process, see, all of us are guilty as an industry, because I'll tell you what used to happen earlier and how it's shifted. And correct me if I'm wrong at any point, because I think two people parallelly can have a different view.
Absolutely.
The thing is that if you would have, is my net stable? Hello?
No, I'm sorry. Your voice is fading in and out once in a while. I can largely hear you, but it tends to fade in and out.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Am I audible now? Now is it proper?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Till where did you follow me?
So I was following you all the way. It was just that it was a little bit of a break, but we could follow you.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that, see, what happened now when you started marketing, and performance marketing led to sales. What marketers became, and every marketer in their own shoes or businesses became greedy about, is that how can I reduce the cycle from salience to sales? And that is what the game is all about, right? If you would have seen the funnel, the IDA model and all of those things. IDA model and creating a call and recall and all of those things was a decade-long exercise, which marketers used to do very passionately. All of that is gone. Why is it gone? Is because earlier you had, suppose, a 20 crore budget as an FMCG brand. You felt that creating a film or any kind of communication worth 1 crore or 2 crore, which is 10% of your overall budget, is de-risking. Right? Because you would make sure that is how much you would promote it. Because you really had to go all out at that point in time. You couldn't do like 10 social media posts and, boost it at a certain frequency and expect sales to happen. So the one side is it became a lot more performance driven, but the second side is that it became a lot more measurable, and that measurable was something that a lot of businesses were waiting for who didn't have the deep pockets to kind of go and try that. So what it did was it democratized the way people communicate, the way people consume brands, and the way people can build brands in the space. And again, at the same time, you are no longer doing a 2 crore film anymore, or you're not doing a 20 crore media plan. What you're doing is you're breaking it into smaller chunks. So, which means that you would take that same budget of 100 rupees and you would say, I would do 5 campaigns or 6 campaigns in a year, round the clock to keep the mind space occupied. But instead of making one big film, I would make smaller pieces of communication and regularly engage, because each communication, because of the widespread of psychographic and demographic of the audience coming in, I can target you with a very different messaging for the same brand versus targeting me with the same brand and a very different messaging. And I'll give you a classic example of 2 brands, which are all recent brands, legacy brands. One is called Rare Rabbit, which you must have heard about. Now, Rare Rabbit will target you also and me also, but it will target you very differently versus the way it will target. And the second brand is Mokobara. Both of the brands, if you would see, it is targeting people in a certain income bracket. But the fact is, what they have done is they have removed, or they have created an elongated demographic bracket, saying that you can afford it if you fall in this bracket and you're new age, stylish, and all of those things. So I would say that there are 2 sides of looking at it, saying yes, everything has become performance driven, and we are guilty. We shouldn't make everything performance driven. But on the other hand, it has become more exciting for someone who wants to sit and measure from a business standpoint. And ultimately, if marketing doesn't add to business, marketing is the first division that gets cut also whenever there is a problem. So that's our reality. So people are also trying to make sure they're proving their worth. And that is how I look at it, at least as an individual. So creativity shouldn't be compromised. That's the bottom line, at least from the way we operate. But saying that only creativity is paramount and data is not important is also not the way. Because earlier, I'll tell you this small insight. A lot of creative directors that were like looked at as stalwarts, because they would create one ad and it would be promoted, played 10 times, it grew on people's mind and all of those things. When their ads are tested and measured today, it is creating a different amount of quality. Ad must have created in the past a lot of hoo-ha, but today, if they're not getting clicks, if they're not leading to sales, people are not responding to it. Do you understand? Very different kind of challenge and test for someone who has been in for so long. And you see a lot of movement in that direction. They have been repackaged in many ways. Elevation and all of these terms and the way they are used, we all know how it is. But the fact it is a signal that all that existed does not work for the future. That's my thought.
Great. No, I think great points. In fact, I think you've already addressed some of the questions that are coming from the community. I mean, Shruti was asking that, any cautionary tale that brands should avoid when transitioning to a digital first approach. And you touched upon that, like, how we should not be kind of, doing the sacrificing at the expense of creativity. You kind of touched upon that. Aaron and Rohit were asking about what are the key advantages of adopting a digital first approach in brand building. And I would imagine that your answer, which talked about the democratizing and the ability to target different cohorts through the same campaign, is, I think, really the big advantage that you really have out there. So I get you, and very clearly, obviously times have changed. And like you said, there were many forces at work. One, obviously, the whole advent of social media, the penetration of internet, the penetration of smartphones. I think these are all forces that kind of came together to really, ensure that we were consuming more and more digital content, and therefore digital obviously became more mainstream than, let's say, the erstwhile mainstream media, right? But, some of the romantics at heart will say, I mean, do we now need to say goodbye to the old generation of brand building? I mean, is it time to say goodbye to, the old Cadbury's ad, the Hamara Bajaj ad, the Pidilite ads, the ones which are really iconic ads out there? We don't see that happening anymore, right? So any thoughts on that? I mean, do you feel any sadness for that? Or you say, okay, good, that was all money being wasted. We should put all the money towards digital.
I was telling you that I had this very interesting chat. The question that you asked about the old days of advertising and the glorious days of it and all of those things with someone who was in the industry for 3 decades. And I said that, see, earlier, I'll tell you the way it was, right? My childhood was sitting in front of, with my family in front of the TV screen and watching TV shows. Now, between that, ads were like a break. Now, all of us put the ads together, whether it was my father, whether it was my mother, my sister, everyone, all of us watched the same ad. Hamara Bajaj became Hamara Bajaj, a Cadbury became, whatever that Cadbury was. Shubh Aram and all. Coke became Open Happiness. Everything became what they were. And jingle and all this became iconic because it kind of got stuck in our head because all of us put it together and enjoy while you're working. Today, that's not the case. We have multiple screens firstly, so our mind space is divided. If you would look at it, like what my mother watches on YouTube is very different than what I watch on YouTube versus obviously our screens have gotten divided.
So yes, so Vivek, what I was telling you was that the screens have divided between what you watch versus what I watch, and what was possible earlier to create that enduring piece of work has become limited because there are many campaigns that I would really love and I would go home and speak about it, but none of my family members would know about it because they have not watched it. Again, the quality of advertisement overall has gone down because in fact there have been articles that have recently come up on celebrity advertising that there is no use of creativity, they're just filling in stars and a lot of other things. In fact, Piyush Pandey had an opinion on it very recently. So I would say that it is great to say that there was this golden days of advertising. Similarly, there was golden days of movie making also. There was a Scarface and there was there was a Sholay. Like there are different industries that seen different glorious days. But earlier it was possible to run a movie for like 50 weeks. There was Golden Jubilee, there was Platinum Jubilee and all of those things. Now, where is the time? So the thing is, it is not that it was a waste of money. I think every era has its challenges, right? And every era evolves the way it evolves. So I think rather than sitting and just trying to live in the past, and and that's a serious thing, right? You just have to keep moving. You cannot say, oh, those were the days where we did brand building to the most or the purest format possible. And today what we are doing is not pure. Thank you. That is not the case. It was like that was the era of brand building in a different way. Era of brand building in a different way. As long as you are staying true to the way that you're building the brand, your brand is being honest, the fundamentals haven't changed. Like you still need a brand architecture, you still need a personality, you still need a voice tone, all of those things. It cannot be that I'm just going to build a brand out of my whim. So the fundamentals haven't changed. The only difference is that what took earlier, earlier there was a brief that was shared and then people would sit on that brief for 6 months, 8 months, do research, insight mining and all of those things. That all is not possible now. In 6 months, you have to possibly roll out 3 campaigns now. So you have to be at it, A. Second, you have to consume information and deliver at the same time. So that gap has reduced. Earlier, you could let your subconscious mind take over and think about it and have a lot more thoughts. That's not possible. You have to think fast. So yes, it is challenging. It is stressful. For lack of a better word, it is stressful. But yeah, it is what it is. Like you cannot keep reminiscing what doesn't exist anymore. Or it will soon cease to exist. Now imagine with AI coming in, we would be sitting and saying, oh, in our days, in the next 5 years only. Like in my office, if you see the workforce, I feel like I'm out of touch. So that is how it is. And it is a challenge. Now imagine someone who's been in the industry for 13, 14 years, feeling that, oh my God, I don't know if I will be. And so it's a personal thought that, you have to work very hard to stay relevant.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, I don't think so. The old days of advertising are over. I think there is a new way and age of advertising that is coming, which will be very different. It will be more exciting. And it will definitely not be devoid of what brand building fundamentals are. It may have newer ways, in fact, newer theories or newer possibilities of what one can do.
I think I'm now sounding like an old romantic fool, lost in my old days, like, out there. Yeah, but jokes apart, I think you touch upon some very relevant points, because I think what has fundamentally changed is really been the pace at which technology and the attention spans and all of that has, the way it's been evolving, right? So I think we really need to kind of just stay relevant, right? And I think staying relevant obviously has probably become one of the biggest challenges for civilization as such, right now. Uh, but moving along, you made a very interesting point when you said that the fundamentals of marketing haven't changed. This is a favorite question of mine, which I typically ask any marketer whom I kind of interact with, saying that if Kotler were to rewrite marketing management, his Bible, what do you think he would have approached it differently? And we have always talked about the 4 P's of marketing, and we've talked about storytelling and content as a main point. How do you think those things would be different now, if you were to just kind of put together this whole, the basic principles of marketing right now?
See, first of all, I think we had a joke in college, and I still think that joke is relevant. That whatever Kotler writes, no one does it. It's all good it's all good to read and consume and all of those things, but it has never been practical, in a lot of other ways. But it gives you a great theoretical foundation to your work. So that is how I would view it. And if he had to approach it today, I would say that while there are 4 P's of marketing, and in some cases social causes have 7 P's and all of that, but I would add a new P to that, and that's space. And I think that is the most important thing that should be added to marketing in general. I have seen that the assembly line of working, which is a planner thinks of an idea, then goes to the creative, and then first of all there is research comes to planner goes to creative goes to media, and account management in between kind of orchestrates all of that, and finally goes live, and then there is a feedback loop that comes in. I think that assembly line is no longer existent. That has to break. I think people have to wear multiple hats. So example, a strategist needs to know how to be creative. A creative needs to know why he or she is a strategist. Account management or understanding what the client is saying is the core of every human or marketer that should exist. So I think I would approach, or at least if he were to approach, his point of view should have been more around how the lines have blurred, and it is no longer the way originally things were. Like example, I'll give you a small example from Kotler's book only, which was around CRM, where customer relationship management, usually had emailers and call centers and all of those things. You look at a uni-channel approach, or where it is no longer that call center operates differently from emailers, or emailers operate differently from social media messaging. It is not the way it is. You always have a centralized hub now. All of this is a part of. You may have different skill set for people working it, but there has to be a centralized management system that comes in for your CRM, which was not possible earlier. So how tech has changed the division, or how it has brought the divisions closer, is what I think he would focus on, and definitely add the P pace to the entire thing, because all of this needs to be achieved in a certain way and at a certain pace, because you cannot keep waiting for it. What we call it omni-channel ecosystem. Now there are some brands that are doing it, and they are seeing much better success and results out of it. So that's how I would sort of assume he would look at the space right now.
No, I think pace is, a great addition to the 4 P's. I think literally the way the business is working now, you have to kind of keep evolving, and faster and faster. You've got new platforms coming, and you have to kind of, I would imagine, keep rethinking the new media formats, media vehicles, that are emerging out there. Now, I think great points here. So you actually talked about the whole thing about influencer marketing. In fact, you touched upon a comment that Piyush Pandey had talked about, and there's a question here from Shinu, who's basically asking that, can you provide some insights into the role of influencers and user-generated content in brand building? We obviously saw this huge hype, what we call as a creative economy, over the last few, I would say 18 months, but how much of it do you think this is going to be continually a part of it, or will this now just become a smaller, contributor?
So I'll tell you, my opinion was very different, say 6-8 months back about this, and it has shifted drastically. My opinion was that creator economy, or creators economy in general, would see a downside in times to come. Like that was my thought 6 months back. But I have, from what the data that I've gathered in the past 6 months, I have realized that what will happen is that if suppose there are 1,000 creators and those 1,000 today get 10 interactions each. I'm just creating a hypothetical scenario. What will happen is those 1,000 possibly may become 500 or 400. But the interaction of those 400 will become multifold because they have managed to create a voice and personality and tone of their own that is so unique that it automatically attracts people. Because, and influence, I'll first break it. So influencers have always been effective for a campaign to make it reach a larger audience. There is no doubt about it. With the performance marketing and the tech part of it, you can always track also how an influencer is, contributing to your brand with the whole UTM mechanisms and other things. So you can always merge affiliate and influencers together. So, and you can say that, okay, certain influencers I will be looking at from a reach awareness plan standpoint, certain influencers I'll be looking from a paid standpoint in terms of my conversion and traction. And that has always been the case and it has worked well. With the creators that are coming in, the kind of content they are creating, the long form content or long format content. We've been speaking so much about mind space and people's attention span reducing, but you go to YouTube and you would see just the opposite. There are podcasts which are for 45 minutes, which people have sat nicely and saw it and have watched it, and they have, including to our podcast, because people want to consume information that is relevant and authentic to them and important to them. So I would say that creators economy is going to in fact become more professional in times to come. It's going to become more solid. Brands need to start becoming smarter about how they're leveraging and how they are tying up, how they're making sure that the influencers have embargo so that there is uniqueness and exclusivity to the tie-up. All of those things will become more and more important. And I'll give you a small example. Nowadays, if you must have realized, there is a trend in movies and film marketing. Every film has one or two influencers in it. The reason being because that helps greatly to get the footfalls. Because you would still have an A-lister as the hero or the heroine, the actor or the female actor, male actor as a part of the film. But you would still have an influencer to create their social media virality, because the kind of reach and impressions they are able to generate is against the media value and against the payment that you make them is actually quite lucrative. So I would say that the economy that it has created and the way people are building their own brands have been realized by everyone in the space. And I think there would come a point where certain influencers and certain creators would dominate like no one's business, possibly command a lot more than some of the biggest celebs would sort of bring to the table. So that is how I would look at it, because it will be a shift slowly and steadily.
I think very interesting, and especially about your whole view about the creator economy. Actually, kind of shrinking down to those handful of people. In fact, internally, we keep talking at Thinkly, saying that we're not really in the era of creator economy. We're probably in the era of curator economy. I mean, you need to really think about those curated, high value brands who are very relevant, who have reach, and who have great content. Because I would say that the whole frivolous content, for example, is beyond a point not really sustainable. People at end of the day, you could probably launch stories and reels and in shorts or whatever it is. But fundamentally, what people want eventually is great content. And I think that's really why you see this whole kind of getting aggregated to the bigger players, right? In that sense. There's an interesting point here by Shreya. She's saying that in a world filled with digital noise, how can a brand cut through the clutter and engage with the target audience effectively? Obviously, you've touched upon it in a couple of points, but the fact is that end of the day, now everybody has a Swiss thing available, Swiss knife thing available right now. You've got this whole democratized social media. You have the ability to run spots. You have this influencer. Do you really see some brands really trying to do something different, or is it about more of the same thing?
Okay, so I would say that, just to answer Shreya's question, I would say that create noise, but create a different noise. Because in order to be heard, it is not that you don't have to create noise. You have to. That is, there is no two way about it. Just the tune of that should be a little different, firstly. Second thing, I would say that yes, brands have, and again, I usually look at all legacy brands and say that, okay, they have a lot of money to spend. That is why they occupy mind space. But I always look at new age brands and say that, oh, how is it that they are doing things differently? Like I'll give you an example of a brand that has recently, I would say, has made a huge comeback from what it was, is Birkenstock. Now, earlier, 4 years back, 5 years back, no one knew Birkenstock. If I would have gone to any party or any outing, I would have seen not even one person wearing it. But you look at the social media word of mouth and how it has kind of positioned people who wear Birkenstock, that it is there with everyone, or at least 5 people out of 7 or 10 people would be wearing it. The reason being because they done very interesting things. They have tied up with the right influencers. They got it in trend. They made the right strides and movement to kind of get it back. Now, if you would look at their campaign, they must have not done a lot of campaigns. They must have not done this one big film or this one big activity that would make people go like, "Acha ad tha." They would have not done that. But what they have done is they have consistently created a niche for themselves and they have positioned themselves at different places. And this exact same phenomenon happened long, long back. If you would have seen with Hush Puppies in the 70s, when Hush Puppies was out of business, it was almost going to go broke until it entered the rap music scene and people started wearing it in ghettos. And then that is how it kind of grew. At that time, you would say that, oh, it was a different phenomenon. The fact is that was viral in that era. That was virality then. So the definition of virality also kind of changes. So I would say that there are brands who are doing very interesting things consistently, differently. But what they are staying true to now, then this is where I say the fundamentals don't change. You have to know who your target audience is. And you have to know that whom are you speaking to and what are you speaking. See, I can be a mass brand, I can be a premium brand, I can be an uber rich brand, I can be all of that. But the fundamental still remains. If I'm talking to an HNI or an ultra HNI, I have to speak like an ultra HNI, do things that are a part of that person's lifestyle. Like a Lamborghini doesn't make an ad for a reason because they don't need to. You would not see a Rolls Royce doing a commercial because they don't need to. They know whom they are speaking to. So I think, but when you look at a Merck, they have to. They have to do it interestingly because they're competing with 2 or 3 brands in their space immediately that are targeting the same audience, but each one talking a little differently. So I would say it also depends on so there are 4 C's, right? There is your category, there is your consumer in that category, there is the competition, what they are doing, and there is finally the communication that you are going to differentiate yourself from. That doesn't change. You can say that, okay, I will take this brand and because of my limited resources, I will scatter it in a way that I make more money out of it or I make better out of my buck. Or you would say I'm this one brand who will only come on Diwali and do this one film because I have the media inventory and the money, but that is the way that it works. And rest of the year, I will work on sales promotion is a way of looking at both have a market. But the latter will slowly realize that because they're coming only once a year and they're only relying on sales promotion, they have not been able to build a community. And if you don't have community, you don't have evangelists. And whatever form of evangelism is existing, you won't have that. And if you don't have that, then I don't know for how long will you be able to be that brand. Like look at Boat also as one of the brands, right? You look at everyone now carrying Boat over their neck. It's an Indian brand, the way they have built themselves. It has been a youth brand. It's going well. Look at Noise. Tata bought it recently. So I'm saying there are these brands which have come in front of our eyes and they have built themselves. So
great points. Yeah.
That's
so,
how I would look at it.
Anything that you could relate from your personal experience? I mean, any memorable or a successful digital campaign that you've kind of worked on, or the one that you found, typically extremely challenging that you really found? Anything like to share with us? And maybe another example could be one where you kind of work with a traditional brand and try to kind of get them onto the other side. Any interesting thoughts that come to your mind?
So see, I'll tell you, I'll break it. I'll tell you a brand campaign that I worked very hard for that didn't work. Okay, so I'll start with that because that is usually the ones that teach you a lot more than the ones that have worked. There was this one mission that we had tried, where we had conceptualized a concept of a pink belt, which was for women. And the way that the belt was that it was supposed to be a petition where people were supposed to join us. And the whole purpose of that belt was that in rural areas, and we had done this entire study, okay, in rural areas, what happens is that if a woman is molested, and in most cases, by the time the help reaches, they're unconscious and some of them die. because the fact is the help didn't reach to them in time. So what we said that there could be a concept which can be a tech-based concept where we can drive a petition, and that petition can force government agencies to have a pink belt in the wrist of the women. And as soon as you press the button, or due to any force that is more than what is required, automatically it will alert the entire system, that is police, to the nearest hospital. All of those things can create an ecosystem. We made a very beautiful film. There was messaging, there was everything, and we expected the social cost to gravitate a lot of people. But all the assumptions failed because the topic was so sensitive that people didn't want to associate with it. So I would say that was a very good cause, or at least the intention was very different, but it didn't work. And what that taught me, at least personally, was that make sure that the peripheral or the surround is aligned before you do something, because that is what will amplify the messaging. That is one which didn't work. The one that worked beautifully, which was for us, for at least for me, was and at least what I observed was the Mumbai police Twitter account, which was something that where we said that, and this was based on the insight that Mumbai police in general, when you look at them at the grassroots, they are someone who are actually quite funny and humorous if they catch you. So why doesn't that humor reflect online? And the other thing was that when we did a sentiment analysis, we found that there were positives to negative, but there was a lot more neutral. So our game was to turn the neutral to positive rather than trying to turn the negative to positive, because that was a tall ask any which ways. So that the way we created the content, the way we said that let's have a social first voice and all of those things worked very well. And again, it's also a matter of timing, right? The commissioner that point in time, Amyn Ghadiali sir, he was there only for 6 months and he really liked the idea. And again, I'll tell you, his batchmate was Piyush Pandey. So, he, and again, Barkha and a lot of people. So he was also surrounded with people who were like, let's do something different, do something different. So when we presented our content bank to him, we presented two banks. One was a police friendly bank and one was not the social media friendly bank. And he said that, reading at the social media friendly bank, I can tell you there is an individual who has sent me some tweets for sample and it matches there. And that name is Piyush Pandey. So, it worked in that regard. Now, ideally, it's the right place, right? And so some things work for you, you don't know. Yeah. And that took off. And after that, honestly, I was there on the brand for a few months and I disassociated myself because I moved on from that agency. The person who continued is Sanchika Pandey. She's still building it and kudos to her the way she has been building it. So that was a positive one that worked. Similarly, when we did Thank You Sachin for Sachin Tendulkar's retirement, we did retire jersey number 10 because we used to manage Mumbai Indians at that point in time. So no one in the cricketing world could wear jersey number 10. And that was a petition that actually was taken up by BCCI. And it is no longer actually anyone wears jersey number 10 if you would see it because it has been retired. So that was a campaign we did. And it was a print first campaign that was done keeping social in mind. And it became doing something that comes on digital would be Parle NutriCrunch, because a lot of the time that we launched them, it was Parle and they were launching a new range of biscuits. And the way we built the entire communication was with a lot more digital first insight. That was for the first time we created something called as smart DVCs. Now that smart DVCs are DVC that can be for 30 seconds, but you can have a 6-second edit of that DVC only the same messaging in the same amount of time. So how do you go about it was something that was very interesting and challenging. And it worked for the brand. It is still existing. It is doing well. Those were certain experiences. One campaign that I would have loved to do would be the McWhopper campaign that Burger King did for World Peace Day, when they reached out to McDonald's and said, let's collaborate and create a burger that has the buns of McDonald's, but the ingredients inside will be of Burger King, and let's create a burger together. And the CEO or the person who was in charge of McDonald's refused it, and they did it on World Peace Day. But people took it on and it became a social campaign. I think that was a brilliant campaign. I would have loved to do something like this, but I didn't. So the effort is that before I retire in my life, I want to do such campaign.
Yeah.
So I hope those all examples sum up.
No, great examples, I think. And, maybe if not McDonald's, maybe you can get probably Pepsi and Coke to kind of get together and do something. Like, the bottle of who and the content of who, it's going to be interesting because, and I think that's what we kind of miss out, right? I think we kind of miss these big these campaigns, but like, you say, like the example that you talked about, how they're kind of coming back in and becoming relevant, right? And similarly, there was campaign of
Yeah.
Mercedes and BMW, which kind of, I think it was Mercedes, which kind of said that, happy birthday, so and so, good to have, it's very lonely at the top, right? So
Yeah.
acknowledging each other. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of place for wit. It doesn't matter the media changes, the vehicle changes, but you can still apply the same, the brand values and the tonality can still come through.
Yeah.
No, so great
And
points.
if you must say,
No, go ahead, please.
so just one thing, if recently you must have seen Tim Hortons launch in India,
Yeah.
and Tim Hortons is everywhere. We are the ones who have launched it. So the
Right.
fundamental and everything, right from the entire integrated work that has gone into it, right from the hoardings to the print to the social to influencers, everything. And you would have seen that there is a cohesive communication that has come in place. And
Right.
purely because of the fundamentals being right. So it is not that, and again, it's building the business. There are these long queues, all of that is something all over. But it is all done keeping the digital first audience in mind in a very different way.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the point, that the fundamentals don't change. Your what we say in Hindi, आपका तरीका बदल सकता है.
Right. Right.
Uh,
No,
उस
I
चीज
think
को
it's a
कर देगा, but
great point that you
yeah.
picked up also is because I really see that the brands are becoming far more localized in the way they approach. There was a time where, for example, the brand would have, the guidelines from the headquarters. You couldn't touch these things. You couldn't probably, play around with that. I mean, we've seen that. Even in JWT, you have, let's say, the global brands like Unilever would be very, very touchy about what you could play and touch, play around with. But now what we see is that we see a lot of localization, not only in the promotion, also in the product. I mean, look at, let's say, for example, McDonald's Aloo Tikki, right? I mean, that's probably 40% of sales happens in India on that product, and the whole communication that they've done around all of this has been very, very localized, right? Again, that I believe would be because of the element of digital. It allows you to customize based on IP, based on your cohort. You could actually make the communication far more localized, right?
Yeah, I think there is an element of nuancing that comes into it. Like we work with Dell and Taj. Now, if you look at Dell and Taj, they would not be able to localize it to the most possible manner. But what they can do is they can create experiences that can be local in nature. So if you go to a Falaknuma Palace, the tour, the history and the culture of that, the way they kind of infuse the local artisans into the entire story and all of that thing is very interesting because they can bring in that culture. But when you stay at the property, the warmth, hospitality has to be consistent across, whether you are in London, whether you're in Maldives, or whether you're in India, because that is what Taj is known for as a brand. So I think there are some brands that have certain limitations, like Dell. Again, they have a global mandate, and when it comes to India, it does get localized to a great extent in terms of content creation and the nuancing of it and all of that. But certain guidelines can't be overstepped. So there is a limitation, and I would say that there is always a brand that you have a certain trade-off, right? Because you have to maintain that consistency, global image, and all of that. But there are some places where it specifically comes to F&B, specifically comes to technology and other things where there is extreme amount of localization that is possible, whether it is in terms of language, whether it is in terms of taste, whether it is in terms of preference. Like the culture of Bombay is very different from the culture of Delhi. So if you would go to Delhi in Tim Hortons, you would have a butter chicken risotto, right? But if you come to Bombay, you would have those keema beda roti rolls,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because the culture of Bombay has been very different compared to the culture, or Mumbai has been very different compared to the culture of Delhi. So I think the localization also depends on the brand, the product it offers, and what amount of deviation can it do,
Right.
is the way I would sort of look at it.
Right. No, great points. Moving along to the next, really the next thing is that, everything is changing a lot. You actually touched upon this a bit. Like, you said that how advertising has evolved, how media has evolved, and how, we're all kind of struggling to kind of stay relevant, right? And the fact that, AI is coming in, right? So there's a question by David, and I would love to you to kind of enhance that what are the really new technologies which are coming in that brands should be aware of, that a marketer should be aware of, that an agent should be aware of, and how do you see things will change in the next 3 to 5 years?
See, I'll give you an example of branding and packaging. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you would think of, like, everything is imagination in a way. So what tools and technology allows us, like example, there is Adobe Firefly, which is in the works, and there is a beta version of it where you can create videos which can be quicker, faster in terms of the prompts that you're giving and the way you're imagining it. Similarly, there are many tools that are available where you can work on the packaging of a particular brand and have different layouts for your options and recommendations done pretty quickly. So I would say that whatever you imagine, the pace at which you produce becomes faster. But it cannot be devoid of thought. In the sense, it cannot be that you have no imagination or you have no visibility of what you're trying to create and you're just giving prompts which are random and the AI tool or any other tool will be able to generate what you are expecting it to generate. So I would say that what would happen in the next 5 years is that two, three things. One is that people who are very sure of their ideas and are convinced about what they want to create will have a great time because they will have the least amount of dependencies possible. So earlier, if I had a thought of a packaging, I had to go to a designer, convince the person to the T to make sure that that person is creating what is there in my mind. Have series of iterations and all of those things. That time will reduce. Copywriters, I had to go and make sure that the copy suits the design. All of those things will reduce. So what would happen is if I have an imagination of my own, if I can create something, whatever that is, whether it is copy, advertising, digital videos, any kind of things, film scripts or movie scripts or whatever it is, I would be able to create it faster because as long as I know what I want to create. The second thing is my dependencies will reduce, which means that as a human being, as an individual person, I can do more work compared to having 10 people or 5 people. I can do the work of 2 people or rather 5 people as a single person. So there would be reduced dependencies, which means that imagination again takes the front seat. And the third thing is for brands, what will happen is they themselves will evolve with it. So when they're interacting with someone like a professional, like today, suppose for instance, Vivek, I'll give you a small example. Like today, if I come to you for your skill set, I am having a conversation which is intellectual with you. The reason being because I believe that both of us have value to add. So if you can add value to brands in that regard, will also evolve in the same way. And the reason they will depend on you is for your thought process, not so much of the tools and the output. I think agencies will have to rewire themselves and get people who are futuristic in their thinking so that they can deliver from brands. And at the same time, you need to have an imagination and thought process of your own. It cannot be that the tools will do whatever you want them to do. For anything to work, prompt is a very important part. For to know the prompt, you need to know what you want to prompt the tool about. So I would say that's the shift that we would see in the next 5 years. All the people who are just working mindlessly in the field or feel that their job is just coordinating and file pushers and whatever the terms that I use will slowly start becoming irrelevant. That's how I see it. People with no there is a term which we use called DTP operators.
Yeah.
So the dependency is on DTP operators, people who are just there in copywriting without any passion or knowing what they want to do, creators or editors who are just there without any thought process of animation and all of those things. Those are people that you will see less and less of in the field. What has happened is because it has opened up, you will see a lot of talent coming into digital marketing. Every person wants to become a digital marketer. And you would have seen that there is a dearth of talent. Quality has gone down. It is an open conversation in the industry that we don't have good talent. What will happen is the ones out of that which are really good, smart, will become the top 5% or top 10%. And they will have the best time of their lives because they will obviously either be able to build their businesses again, charge more money for the work they're doing because of the output they are able to do, purely because they will have a thought process of their own. So I think AI will sort of navigate us in that direction. That's my assumption.
Right. No, lovely point. In fact, I remember, one of my, early discussion with my boss, when I joined advertising, and, he said that we are in the business of ideas, fundamentally. And I think that probably, holds true even right now, right? Because technology can change, the media vehicle, the form factor might change. But fundamentally, I think, as a marketer or as an advertiser, you fundamentally remain in the business of ideas. And as long as you can ideate and come up with strategic thinking, you'll always have value in this space and you'll always be able to reinvent yourself, right? In that sense.
Yeah. Yes. So Vivek, one thing is a very interesting observation just to add to your point is there is this term called growth marketers. I'm sure you must have heard about growth marketers, right? Growth marketers are nothing but predicting how the trend can grow and how can you ensure that there are the right touch points that are infused in that. And their creativity is an afterthought, by the way. So you create a business plan and you say, okay, I need to run a campaign here and I need to run a campaign here for so and so reason, right? So creativity is an afterthought because business objective is linked. Now, if you would look at that also, what AI will allow is targeting will become sharper. Predicting the output of your targeting will become better because of the data that will be available. And again, the person who knows what they are chasing in terms of business will be able to drive the entire ecosystem more effectively. So either side of the way, whether you're a creative professional or whether you are an analytical or data driven, and I think it's an infusion of both. You cannot just have one, but both ways, you need to know what you want. At the end of the day, that is the bottom line. You cannot be free flowing in that sense.
Great. No, so I would probably reframe that thought. I'd say that you have to be a strategic left brain or a strategic right brain person to ensure that you don't stay obsolete. So either of the ways you have a place, but you just need to be strategic in your thinking, right? In that sense, and that's great. So moving along, I mean, out here, there's a few questions on your career. There's one that had come from Vinita right at the start. When she said that, look, she's a graduate in media, in mass communication, and similarly, she's a what do you really advise to the people who are getting into the career right now, who are kind of getting into the workforce right now? What are your thoughts? What are your advice to them?
I think my biggest advice to them would be that there are a lot of people who are struggling to adapt. Okay, and this is if you would see someone who has been in the industry for 20 years, that person is struggling today to adapt and adopt technology at the pace at which you can. So I would say that if you're entering the field right now, ensure you know everything, whether it is the tools that are available in the market that can make you more and more skilled, whether it is short-term or rather short career courses that you can do, whether it is on AI, whether it is on digital marketing, 4-week or 2-week courses, do more of that because it will only help you upskill faster. And don't restrict yourself in any one direction or domain. So don't think of yourself as, oh, I am a copywriter and I'll only do copywriting. Start thinking of yourself as a more holistic marketer, because trust me, when the time will come, now you will be able to take it much faster compared to anyone else. And I think this is going to be a big shift, Vivek, in my opinion. Earlier, there were these people who were creative and they only remained creative for the rest of their lives. Is not going to be the case. You will have specialization. One or two things will become your core. That is human nature, right? But you have to know how the business works. You have to know how the fundamentals of marketing, brand building, every other thing works in the space. And that is where I feel anyone who's entering right now has a great advantage. The flip side is that there will be many people who will be able to do the job that you do at the same cost, at a cheaper cost. So how are you constantly giving yourself that difference in the space or creating a niche for yourself is where you have to focus on. But yeah, please wear multiple hats, because anyone else who's been in the industry longer than you is struggling to do that.
So this is going to be a scenario that being a jack of all will probably ensure, your longevity rather than of course you need to master some skills, but you need to have a broader, skill sets, right, to kind of survive because you have no way which way things are going to kind of move going ahead, right? Yeah. Before we kind of move to closure, there's a very interesting question that's come from Nikita saying that being minimal is the only content for luxury brands. Agree or disagree?
Okay, I will say that the norms and the category codes of luxury is also changing. Okay, and we have done a deep study on this. So earlier, what was luxury for you or for anyone? I'll put luxury in two segments just for an example to come in. I would say luxury is Taj, but luxury is also 4 seasons, right? And you would see that 4 seasons luxury, or the definition of luxury, has evolved to a point where that luxury and that experience is a lot more fun infused, right? Similarly, you would have another space which is coming up quite a lot right now, is just quite luxury, which is where you believe in luxury, but you don't believe in making a statement because your presence itself is a statement. So I would say that the codes are changing. And you may say that, okay, being minimal is one way of it, aesthetic is one way of it. Yes, that will always be the case. But it is not about, sometimes it is not about being minimal also. Sometimes it is not being evident or visible. That also could imply that it is luxury, which was not the case earlier. So I would say that the codes are changing. aesthetics are always important. There is no doubt about it. Like the composition of your frame or the composition of your artwork, the way you are writing copy, what is it witty, is it intellectual, stimulating a response, who is it to the tone of the brand? That is paramount. That will never change. Whether it is today, whether it is 25 years down the line, it will not change. But the codes of luxury are changing purely because people who have attained wealth have also changed. Earlier, there was generational wealth. Nowadays, there is a lot of new age wealth that has come in. And you would see that across brands. Mercedes would always mean generational wealth, and Audi will always mean new age wealth. So the codes have been changing in that sense. But it is not just if it is minimal, it is luxury. Sometimes luxury can also be fashionable. It can also be more bold in its appeal. So it can differ.
No, I think that was a very insightful view. I mean, that, how you traditionally think about luxury. I mean, there was this interesting paper which said that typically, if you have to charge a premium, let's say when you look at a Louis Vuitton bag, or if you look at, all these luxury goods, you always end up paying for heritage, which is why, if you look at most of these bags, they'll always talk about that, how this is inspired by the queen of so-and-so, the Rani of so-and-so, that kind of a thing. So luxury always stood for heritage, which is also pretty much the code, let's say, for a Taj. But today, luxury can also mean a lot of features, which is, let's say, what all your sportier brands would probably go towards, or like you rightly said, also the understated. So I think it's very fascinating how I think this itself becomes a very interesting topic for maybe an entire Ama session, that how luxury is kind of getting decoded, recoded, reimagined, right? I think great points. So, I think with that, it was really, really wonderful. I really enjoyed the conversation, and really, really would love to have you back here. Any parting thoughts to the audience out here?
No, thank you for having me. It was amazing to be here. And thank you, Vivek, for all the questions that you shot my way. I would, again, love to be back whenever you call me next. And I just want everyone to enjoy and have fun in the field that they are entering. And I hope to see everyone down the road, one way or the other.
No, wonderful. I think it was our privilege to have you over. And I think I honestly couldn't do justice to all the questions that kind of came on the group. So, whenever during the day you have some time, just drop in there. And if you could just reply to some of these messages, whichever you think, that will be wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thank you. Have a nice day, Vivek. I'll see you. Have a nice day, everyone. I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.